Hey, it's been a while. I was planning to make this video like 4 months ago, but I didn't because the mixer was out of stock until now. But anyway, I figured out how to do output delays on the Midas MR18. And why is this a big deal? Because if you've used this mixer before or you've heard about it, it does not have output delays. The feature does not exist. But I figured a way around it that actually works. And there are two methods to do it. One of them is more convenient, but only allows you to add one pair of delayed speakers. The other method allows you to add more pairs of delayed speakers or subwoofers, but at the cost of the convenience. Okay, so how am I getting the output delays? I'm simply using the stereo delay insert. Simple enough, right? Why am I even bothering to do a video about it? Because the idea may be simple, but the implementation is not so obvious. This is the mixer we were using. It's a analog Mackie CFX20 Mark II. And I have nothing against Mackie, but it's really limiting. The only thing you can do on the channel is EQ. It's even a semi-parametric EQ. So it's a fixed high shelf and a fixed low shelf and a parametric mid-band. And every channel has to go through a subgroup and that subgroup to the mains, so you can't send a channel directly to the mains. And there's quite a bit of distance between the front and back speakers, so they are canceling each other. And there is almost no bass. There was some bass, but it's very weak. This is the processor we had, but it's pretty much useless because the maximum amount of delay is 7 milliseconds. That's it. And the distance between these speakers, the back and the front one, is like 3 times as much. So I can't really do anything with that. And there's almost no budget, so I can't really buy an M32 for the church. And also the M32 is kind of overkill. We don't need that much power and we don't have a lot of inputs. So we got a MR18, this mixer. Also in life, you can't get anything for free. What I'm trying to say is that if you want to get a feature that you don't normally have, you're gonna need to give up a feature that you do have. And what is that feature that you're gonna have to give up? It's the ability to use subgroups in the traditional sense of processing a bunch of channels together and then putting it in the mix. Because now the mix is not one thing anymore, and you'll understand what I'm saying in a bit. But in this video, I'm gonna show you how to do the scene, to set up the delay speakers, and also what are the settings for that delay insert to not affect the signal, to just delay it neutrally. And also I'm gonna, at the end of the video, show you how to figure out how much delay you need, how to measure it out and not just guess, oh, this is that much. I'm gonna ask you a few questions, and if you get all of them correctly, then what I'm gonna explain next will make a lot of sense to you. If not, it's okay, you can still follow the steps and get the results, or just download the scene that I gave you in the pinned comment or the description of this video. First question, can you send a channel to the main left and right? Yes, that's the default. Can you send a channel to a bus? Yes. Can you send a bus to the main left and right? Yes. Can you send a bus to another bus? No. Can you send the main left and right to a bus? No. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take bus 5 and 6, link them together, make them a subgroup, and that will be the main left and right for me. And I'm gonna send that to the original main left and right.
I'm in the control app on my computer. It's called MR Edit. And for the ease of navigation, instead of clicking on the channels to select them, I'm gonna use my arrow keys on my keyboard to quickly scroll between all of them. Step number 1 is to remove all the channels from the main left and right. So I'm gonna select channel number 1, go to the main tab on the top, and then turn off the main stereo button. Then select channel number 2, turn off the main stereo button, and I'm using my right arrow key to go to the next channel and turn off the main stereo button. Now, is the aux a channel? Yes, it is. Turn it off. Is the effects, these green effects, channels? Yes, because these are the effect returns, not the sends. So they are channels. I'm gonna turn them off. Okay, good. Now I removed all the channels from the main left and right. Next step is to go to utility on the top, buses, and I want to make bus 5 and 6 my main mix. So I'm gonna select bus number 5, go to the channel tab, and click on the stereo link button. Now 5 and 6 are a pair, a stereo pair, they work together. Next step is to make that bus, that stereo bus, a subgroup. So I'm gonna select bus number 5 and go to the sends tab and click on the bottom on subgroup. And if this is turned off, it will only change for 1 So make sure the global icon is turned on and click down here, and it will make it a subgroup for all the channels. Next, select channel number 1, and on the sends page, turn on bus 5 and 6, and this will put the channel on the subgroup, and do this for all the channels. Next step is to put that subgroup on the main left and right, the original main left and right. So I'm going to select bus number 5 and go to the main tab and turn on the main stereo button. Now what's happening is that all the channels are going to bus 5 and 6, and bus 5 and 6 is going to the main left and right. And that means that whatever I do on bus number 5 and 6, if I do EQ, compression, put in insert, it will all go to the main left and right, the original main left and right. So that's very convenient. You don't have to copy settings from bus 5 and 6 to the main left and right. Now, 5 and 6 are going to be the front speakers that don't need any delay, and the left-right is going to be the back speakers that do need delay. So I'm going to go to the Effects tab on the top and click on the effect number 4. I'm going to click on the Type button, and I'm going to search for the stereo delay. Double-click on it, open it. Now, step number 1, click on the Insert button. Then I'm going to click right here and say main left right and turn on the effects button. Now this insert is working on the left right bus. Good. But as it is, it screws up all the audio. It's of no use to us. So what I'm going to do is click on the screen right here on the green square till I get stereo feed mode. Not cross feed mode, not mono feed mode, but stereo feed mode. Next, the mix is at 100%, low cut all the way down, so it's not cutting anything, high cut all the way up, so it's not cutting anything from the top. And the feed, low cut, turn it down all the way, feed left, turn it down, feed right, turn it down, feed high cut, turn it up, so it's not cutting anything. And the offset needs to be 0. This is very important. And if you're having trouble putting the exact value, press the Control button and drag, and it will make it a lot finer to control, or the Alt button. If you're on Mac, that will be either Command or Option. Now, you may assume that if the factor left and right is on 1, that it's not doing anything. Well, no, it is doing anything. And I'll explain to you later in the video how I figured this out, and I made sure that it's not changing anything in the sound. But for now, turn down all the way the factor left and right till you have a quarter. And these are the settings. Now, with the amount of delay, you input it here in the time. Okay, and you can hold the Control button while dragging to have finer control to go 1 millisecond at a time. Now, unfortunately, you can't go less than a millisecond. So if you have half a millisecond or quarter of a millisecond, you can't do that. But I mean, it's still good enough. Come on, you can do output delays on this console. If you don't want to bother with any of that, you can just load on the effect and load my preset that I gave you. Double click on it and the settings will come and you'll adjust the time from here. And if you also don't want to do all the setup for the scene, you can just click right here on load scene, find the scene that I gave you, click on it, and my setup will come to you. Now, on my setup, I used also a limiter on my bus 5 and 6, which is the main left and right for me right now.
Hold on a second. Doesn't every insert have a latency? So shouldn't I put the same insert on both buses or else it will phase? No, in this case, it doesn't matter because whatever is happening on the subgroup 5-6 is going to the main left and right. So no matter what is the insert that you use or you don't use, it will add the same exact amount of delay to the bus 5-6 and to the left-right bus. So it will not change the time relationship between them. So it doesn't matter. Quick recap for the first method. Step number 1, remove all the channels from the main left and right. Step number 2, link bus 5 to bus 6 and make it a subgroup. Step number 3, put all the channels on that subgroup. Step number 4, put that subgroup on the main left and right. Step number 5, insert the stereo delay effect on the main left and right and do the settings that I showed you. And now your 5 and 6 is the front speakers and the left and right is your back speakers. And also keep in mind, you don't need to copy and paste settings between these two because everything you do on the bus 5.6, the subgroup 5.6, will get transferred over to the main left and right.
Let me show you the second method, which allows you to add more pairs of delayed speakers or subwoofers. And in this method, you don't need to remove any of the channels from the main left and right like the previous method. So if I click on Setup and initialize the console, that's how it comes by default, and that's what we want. So the left-right will be the front speakers, the very front next to the stage. And I will use buses to do the delays. So I'm going to click on Utility and Buses. And for the sake of this example, I'll do all of them. You just need to do as many as you want. So if you just have 2 extra speakers, so 1 pair of extra delayed speakers, do the first method I showed you. If you have more, do as many as you need. Okay, so I'm going to click on bus number 1 and go to the channel tab, stereo link to bus number 2, 3, link to 4, 5, link to 6. And if you're using subs in mono, you don't need to link it, just use the bus as it is. Next is to make all of them subgroups. So I'm going to click on bus number 1, go to the Sends tab, and click on the bottom on subgroup. 3, subgroup, 5, subgroup. Now I have 3 pairs of stereo subgroups, which I'm going to use as delayed speakers. Now I'm going to select channel number 1 and go to the Sends tab and turn on all the buses that I just set up right here. Select channel number 2, turn on all the buses, and do this for all the channels. And the reason I am using subgroups is that the main fader of the channel will send the signal of the channel to all of them. Because if I'm just using normal buses, post-fader buses, I'll have to click on the bus and send the channel to it. And that's really not effective at all. So this fader, which you use to mix the main left and right, will also get to the buses, which are subgroups, which is great. Now we still have to do is put the delay insert on the buses. So I'm going to go to the effects page, and let's start from the end. I'm going to click on the type right here and search for the stereo delay and put it on all of them. So I have 3 pairs of stereo delayed speakers. So I'm going to use 3 stereo delays. And you can use my preset that I gave you, load and find it and load it for all of them. And the way you align speakers is always to the front ones. So since the left and right is the front speakers, I will align bus 1, 2 to the front speakers, 3, 4 to the front, 5, 6 to the front. Okay, never align them to one another because it's less accurate that way. Now, the inconvenience of doing this method is that with the previous method, whatever you did on the bus 5, 6 will go through to the main left and right. Now, if you do EQ or compression on any of them, you'll have to copy and paste. So let's say I do on the main left and right some EQ, let's say that's what I need for the sake of this example, which is terrible. And let's say I did some compression, whatever, and I want to copy it to all of them. So I'm gonna copy and then select bus 5 and paste, EQ and compression, paste, select bus 3, 4, paste, EQ and compression, click paste, 1, 2, paste, EQ and compression, and click paste. It's really tedious, okay? And you also cannot use an insert since you used the insert for the delay. So if you only have 1 pair of extra speakers, do the first method. If you have more, do this method.
And of course, don't forget to actually insert the effect on the appropriate bus. So turn on the insert button, choose the bus, and then turn on this purple effects button to activate the insert. Quick recap for the second method. Step number 1, keep all the channels on the main left and right normally. Step number 2, stereo link as many buses as you need for the delayed speakers, or don't link them if you're just using them in mono for the subwoofers. Step number 3, make these buses into subgroups. Step number 4, put all the channels on all the subgroups. Step number 5, insert the stereo delay effect on all the subgroups with the settings that I showed you. Now the main left and right is the front speakers, and the rest of the groups are the back speakers respectively. Now keep in mind, nothing gets transferred over from the main left and right to the rest of the buses, so if you do EQ or compression or both on the main left and right, you'll have to copy and paste these settings for the other buses. And also, always align the back speakers to the front, never to one another. Here's how I figured out that this whole stereo delay insert thing was gonna work on the MR18 before even buying it for my church, because although it may seem like a cheap mixer in the world of audio gear and digital mixing consoles, but $1,000 is still a considerable amount of money, and it would be irresponsible if I buy it and then try to discover if it would work or not. So to check, I used my own personal M32 console because it's basically the same exact mixer but with less channels and less features, but the effects and the inserts are exactly the same. So here's what I did. All I want from this insert is to delay the signal without changing any of the sound at all. So I'm sending pink noise from bus number 1 and 2 and bus number 3 and 4. On bus 1, 2, there's nothing. On bus 3, 4, there is this effect inserted. But regardless of the time I input, the effect itself has a latency. It adds a certain amount of delay to the signal. So to measure that delay, I recorded these two buses into my DAW, and the distance between them is 48 samples at 48 kilohertz, which is exactly 1 millisecond. So I selected bus number 1 and went to the routing page, and on the out page, I input 1 millisecond of delay on the output. So now the comparison is valid because there's exactly the same amount of delay on both buses. They are starting at the same time, and the only variable is the settings of the insert. And I kept tweaking the settings on the delay insert until both the unaffected signal and the affected signal are summing up together instead of canceling each other and doing this whole weird phasing and comb filtering thing. Now, if I do the null test, which means if I flip the polarity on one of them, they should cancel each other if the signal is exactly the same. And they do cancel each other. Mostly. This is without the insert, this is with the insert. Now let me add them up together. They are adding up nicely. Now if I flip the polarity on one of them, they are cancelling each other, but there is still some high frequencies. You can see right here. Now, what's happening is that the insert has filters on it. So if I go here, low cut and high cut, even though it is at 10 hertz and 20 kilohertz, the filter still exists, okay? So I cannot turn it off. And what it's doing, it's something like that. It's slightly attenuating the higher frequencies, which is honestly not that big of a deal. And here's why. Unless you have an acoustically treated room and expensive speakers with fancy tweeters that have an extended high end and you can hear all the details in the high frequencies, unless you have these two things, you're probably not gonna even notice the slight attenuation in high frequencies caused by this effect. And I'm just showing you this because I think you should know what's going on. But if you do notice it and it does bother you, you can just put an EQ on that bus and do a high shelf at 10 kilohertz and boost it by a couple of decibels. That's it. But honestly, in my case, it's helping because I have the back speakers slightly lower in volume than the front speakers anyway to avoid the reflections from the back wall of the room. And also, they are an extension of the front speakers, so they shouldn't be as loud as the front. And the whole purpose of aligning speakers, other than they should sum up instead of cancel each other, is to make the sound feel like it's coming from the stage, not from above your head. And what can trigger your ear? Very easily, high frequencies. So in this case, it's helping me because if it's too bright above my head, it feels like the band is playing from above my head, not from the stage, and it's really distracting. Something to be aware of is that even if you perfectly time align your speakers, it is not a guarantee that they are also phase aligned, because phase is frequency dependent. Phase is time alignment, but for a certain frequency. So when you do a general time alignment, you're saying that I play a sound from this speaker and it arrives to my ear at the exact same time that the sound from the other speaker arrives to my ear. That is time alignment. Phase alignment is for that specific frequency or frequency range, these frequencies arrive at the same time. Cool, so if you have mains and subwoofers, you'll have to look for the crossover region where they meet. So let's say it's between 90 hertz and 120 hertz. You'll have to check for the alignment in that frequency range. Now, if you have speakers of the same model or from the same manufacturer, or mains and subs that are meant to work together as a set, they are designed that way, if you time align them, they will most likely also be phase aligned. But just know that it's not always a guarantee. This is the stage where the musicians are. These are the front speakers next to the stage, and these are the speakers that are a bit further back into the room. Now, to be clear, when I say front and back, I'm referring to the audience perspective. So the audience is here looking at the stage. So this is the front, this is the back. Now, you are here in the back and listening to all the speakers. These speakers are physically closer to you, so you will hear the sound from these speakers earlier than the sound from these speakers. And this will cause some of the sound to cancel out. You'll lose the bass first. Some of the low frequencies, or even all the low frequencies, will be canceled out because of the physical time delay. So the solution is to get the speakers next to each other, right? But you can't physically do that because you need the coverage. So what can you do? We can delay the back speakers to wait for the sound from the front speakers to arrive until this point, and then they go together. And now they will sum up instead of canceling each other. So if we delay these, the exact amount of distance that is between the front and back speakers, it's almost as if the speakers are physically next to each other. Okay, now how do you measure that delay? Get yourself a microphone. I'm using a measurement mic right now, but you can use any mic you have available, even if it's a dynamic microphone. As long as it's not broken, it does the job. Okay, now it's getting pretty dark, but here's what we're doing. I'm gonna play a sound from the front speaker alone, and then I'm gonna play a sound from the back speaker alone, and I'm gonna record them, and I'm gonna measure the distance between them. So let's go to the mixer right here. And I have on channel 1 this microphone that I'm using to measure, and I turned on phantom power because it's a condenser microphone, it needs power, and I turned up the gain quite a bit. Why I'm doing that? In order not to turn up the speakers too loud, so it catches the sound without having too loud of a sound in the room. Okay, and then I'm going to the aux and input, and I'm gonna tell it to get the input from the USB. So now it's not getting the input from these physical aux inputs, it's getting it from Pro Tools. Okay, it's USB 1718. So I'm gonna go to Pro Tools, create a click track, and on that track, I'm gonna give it output 1718. Now if I play it, it's going out of the speakers. And I have it on the aux just to be able to turn it up and down as much as I need, because click tracks are obnoxiously loud. So I'll create 2 new tracks, audio tracks, one for the front speaker and one for the back speaker. So this is for the front, and this is for the back. And since the speakers are next to each other, the left and the right are on the same level, there's no need to measure both. I'll only measure the front one on this side and the back one on this side. Here's what we'll do. I'll arm the track to the front, and I will not mute anything on the mixer. I will turn down the amplifier from the back and turn it up from the front. So right now, we are only listening to the front speaker. I am gonna hit record. That's all we need. Let's go to the other track, arm it, disarm the first one, and I'm gonna turn up the back speaker and turn down the front speaker. And I'm gonna record. The reason it was perfectly aligned is because I already did this measurement and I kept the time on the delay insert. I didn't turn it down for this video. So yeah, let's just pretend that didn't happen and continue as if I'm doing it from scratch. We already measured the front speaker, and this will be our reference to align the back speaker too. Okay, so I'm gonna turn down the front speaker and turn up the back speaker. And the delay insert has the time turned down all the way. So I'm gonna measure this. And as you can see, the back speaker is earlier than the front, and that makes sense because it's physically closer to us than the front speaker. So I'm gonna keep turning up the delay until I have these perfectly aligned. Now, because I've measured this before, I know that I have to input 21 milliseconds on this insert, and it's really difficult to do accurate time right here, so I'm gonna hit the control button while I'm dragging to make it more fine, so I could do 1 millisecond at a time. And if I take it up to 21 milliseconds, you can see, I'll measure again. You can see it is perfectly aligned. I'm gonna zoom in. It's aligned down to the sample. It's exactly starting at the same time.
Since you cannot do less than 1 millisecond of delay on this insert, so the smallest increment is 1 millisecond, you may end up in a situation where your back speakers are either ever so slightly earlier than the front speakers or ever so slightly later than the front speakers. And in this case, I would rather have them slightly later than the front because your ear is very quickly drawn to the first sound it hears. So if the back speakers are earlier than the front, you will hear the back speakers first, and the sound will feel like it's coming from above your head or next to you, the speaker that is closer to you. Whereas if it's slightly more delayed than the front, then you will hear the sound coming from the stage to the back. And that's the way to go.
That's it. It's not rocket science. If you enjoyed this video, which I'm sure you did, if you're still watching till now, make sure to hit the like button. I would appreciate that very much. Thank you. And click on this video to watch next, because this is what YouTube thinks is best for you and you'll enjoy them more. And I'll see you in the next one.